trying to work through some stuff here and moving on to the Patsy Ramsey 1998 interview fur clothing discussion. Um, During a June 1998 interview with Detective Tom Haney, investigators questioned Patsy Ramsey about fur garments in her household, according to the transcripts um, publicly available. Patsy admitted, and I think these are the ones that were posted somewhere in Web Sleuths, the online forum. Um, yeah, I think they came from Web Sleuths, but they're the full interview transcripts from 1998. Patsy admitted to owning a black mink coat and a black mink muffler hat with earmuffs, while John owned a reversible men's leather jacket with a real fur lining, described as a real low cut black shiny pile. Uh, she also owned a pair of black, I think, ski boots trimmed with what she thought was real leopard fur or mink. Patsy recalled that JonBenet had little black shoes decorated with leopard or whatever skin and had worn them the night before her murder. And none of these items contained beaver fur. We have been toying with the idea or walking around sort of this understanding of the existence of beaver fur and animal fur, and how JonBenet had some sort of black, dark, or dark. I don't want to say black, dark animal fur on her hands. She also had the beaver fur, also uh, on the back of the tape. And I was wrestling with this idea that you had sort of this red uh, synthetic wool garment that Patsy was wearing that was also on the back of the tape. And what I was trying to understand more about was all of these things are sort of converging to the tape. These several things are converging to the tape, the beaver hair, and synthetic red wool fibers similar to Patsy. Um, but from what I understand, the tape never made it upstairs. I don't think I originally thought that John brought JonBenet. I originally thought that John brought JonBenet upstairs. That's what I thought with the white blanket. But I don't think that was the case. In which, and I say it's important to mention that because the tape that was pulled from JonBenet's mouth was John pulled it off and then just dropped it on the white uh, cover. But then Fleet White comes around the corner, picks it up, looks at it, and drops it on the cover. What we don't know, from what I understand, and the silent partner that sort of gets left out of this is John Fernie, who was also supposedly down there with the other two men as well, but he never gets mentioned a lot. They don't really say what John was doing as well, but supposedly he follows, John Ramsey he's there in front of the window. They notice the window. They're there in front of the window, kind of looking at it, and then they kind of get down to try to see if there's any glass or anything in front of the window, and then John just takes off. No rhyme or reason. He just takes off to the wine cellar. And I know the police get a lot of flack for not opening the wine cellar first thing that morning. But like I said before, John Ramsey didn't do it when he went down there in the morning. Fleet White didn't do it when he first went down there in the morning. The cops didn't do it when they first went down there in the morning. So it's really interesting, and it's just interesting that all of a sudden John Ramsey decides to just run into and check the wine cellar. And what are the implications of John Ramsey just getting up and taking off on his friends? He didn't say, neither Fleet nor John Fernie report that John looked up, had this look in his eye that we can tell. Maybe it's in Fleet's transcripts. Nobody says that John looked up, had this look in his eye, and said, I've been looking all over this house. Maybe there's one room that I didn't check. And that room is the wine cellar. We got to go take a look. To be honest, I don't know how many other rooms that John looked at during that time period, because there were certainly several other rooms that he could have checked. You have I think the boiler room that was right in front of the wine cellar, right around the corner. You could have just checked in that back corner. Also, maybe he checked the closets. That would have also been a good hiding point for JonBenet as well. And so all of a sudden, John just leaps up and runs and goes and checks the wine cellar, and he starts moving quickly. When he checks the wine cellar, he immediately opens, and he does it so fast. You got to remember, it's just right around the corner from the train room where they were. They're over by the window. John Fernie, John Ramsey, Fleet White, they're over by the window messing with this suitcase on their hands and knees. John gets up and bolts to the wine cellar. Doesn't say anything. Rips open the door fast. Immediately knows that it's JonBenet on the ground. He's not taken aback. He's not caught off guard. He's not breathless. He doesn't fall to the ground. He doesn't scream. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't fall and crawl. He immediately notices that it's JonBenet, and he immediately knows what to do. I'm going to move on here a second, but he immediately knows what to do. He goes over to her, and in the matter of time, just in the matter of seconds, maybe to a couple minutes, where Fleet and John Fernie are kind of lost as to what's going on, because they said Fleet trailed behind him rather quickly. John goes in there. Now, Fleet went down there. This is the thing. I think Fleet went down there, said he didn't see anything. Fleet went down there, said he opened the door. Didn't see anything. He said, I didn't see nothing. But John opens the door, and he's like, oh, immediately, I know where it is. And we don't know. It's up in the air. It's a toss-up to whether or not John turned on the light or whatever. I think he says he doesn't remember whether he turned the light on or not. But John immediately knows. And so what we understand is that JonBenet was in sight enough for there, even if Fleet didn't know what he was looking at. JonBenet was in sight enough, because Fleet wears glasses. JonBenet was in sight enough for Fleet to see something and be like, I don't know what that is. That looks like something. But he's saying, man, that wasn't, I don't know. And then John said that when Fleet talked to the cops, all of a sudden something was funny. So John, he's running, and he instinctively knows that this is JonBenet. Now, getting back to this, they're asking them, do you have anything fur related or whatnot, and so on and so forth? And Patsy's like, yeah, we got a couple of things. And these things are culminating into the tape. And they just happen to be, some of the things just happen to be family related stuff. We don't know how they got there, but they just either Patsy could have gone down in the basement earlier or later. It doesn't note that she had any gifts down there that she needed to take to the White's house or anything, which would be a reason for her to go down there and, and be in the paint tray and so on and so forth, because the paint tray was taken down there, a couple days earlier. And so what I don't understand is how that red garment got under the tape, or got within I think it was under the tape, a little bit under tape. Yeah. And then in the sort of garrote linings and stuff like that, just like JonBenet's hair was. But getting back to my other point, John picks up the tape, and the reason why I question this about Patsy's red garment, John picks up the tape, drops it. Fleet White comes behind him, picks up the tape, drops it. I think John picks up JonBenet, carries her from the wine cellar up the stairs, lays her down without the cover. Which means, because I was going to say, if that's the case, then maybe Patsy in her red sweater hugged JonBenet. The tape was down there on the blanket or whatever, and maybe because Patsy was hugging JonBenet, sort of rocking her back and forth, maybe that's how the red Patsy's red sort of synthetic wool sweater ended up under the tape adhesive, but the tape never made it upstairs. From what I understand, the tape never made it upstairs. So I am confused as to how the red garment that was microscopically similar to Patsy would have found its way on the tape. That's what I'm confused about. So it's like an intermingling of external intruder related things that are found on the tape and possibly internal things that are found on the tape as well. And so the investigator is trying to flesh out, what do you guys actually own? Because obviously you're not going to tell me that you own anything beaver fur related. Why would you do that? And when we go back up to Judge Carnes, as we talked about earlier, these observations in the Chris Wolf versus Ramsey defamation case, when they observed some of these things like the duct tape and the fiber evidence and the dark animal hairs and the beaver fur, Judge Carnes in the case concludes that some of the material used comes from the outside, and so supporting the possibility that this intruder bought things from the outside. And so we're trying to sort of disentangle what the intruder might have bought in and how some of those materials, where the intruder tracked through the house based on what material that they apparently bought in, and how some of these things link back to John and Patsy or are similar to John and Patsy. So kind of moving on then, some of the fiber evidence linking to the Ramsey clothing. So some of the later analysis of fiber evidence was summarized. And so I'm like, when I put this together, I just want to take raw information. I just want to take raw information. I already know some things don't fit. I just want to take raw information and say, okay, this is what the information says, and this is what I know to be the case. So later analysis of fiber evidence was summarized by crime journalist Ryan Ross in Crime Magazine. Ross reviewed reviewed crime lab results and prosecutor statements and noted several important comparisons. Number one, fibers from Patsy's red and black sweater, and I think they said it was like red, black, and gray or something like that, but predominantly it was red. Just want to check if I don't want to say it before it needs to be said. Okay, I don't see it, but I'm just read everything before I get into it. Um, Fibers from Patsy's red and black sweater jacket. Crime lab comparisons found fibers from the same type of red sweater jacket Patsy wore to a Christmas dinner, embedded on the adhesive side of the duct tape taken from JonBenét's mouth. Similar fibers were found in a paint tray in the basement and tied into the ligature around JonBenét's head region. This suggests that the sweater jacket or a similar garment was present near the crime scene. Correct. And again, the problem I have is that if you're the Ramseys, how is it that we keep finding stuff like this that makes you or puts you so close to the crime scene, but you weren't there at all? You weren't even down there, and it's like, I got to give you a way out to say that maybe you You were downstairs of some sort, and maybe you went down there to retrieve something from the paint tray or what have you, to pick up, some gifts that you gave to Fleet and Priscilla White. But I don't know of anything that says that they took gifts to Fleet. But you know what? This might save them from this because they took Patsy and John took gifts to uh I think it was the Walkers. It was the Walkers and it was the Steins. So Patsy may have walked down the stairs and maybe the gifts were close by the paint tray area. I think Patsy was wrapping gifts and things of that nature in the washroom, which is not, the paint tray was in front of the wine cellar, from what I remember, from what I understand. The paint tray was in front of the wine cellar, along with her a couple of canvases that she was working on. Those were in front of the wine cellar. The art stuff was in front of the wine cellar directly. But the room in where Patsy was packing everything, the gifts and wrapping the gifts and stuff like that, that was in the washroom, you know, maybe 10 feet away or something like that. But not near, really. Well, maybe more than 5, 10 feet. But it was in another room in the basement, not even there. But what I say is that because it depends on where JonBenet was when the taping happened, to try to pick up those fibers, because I'm trying to give Patsy the benefit of the doubt that when she goes down there, maybe she goes down there before they leave. She goes down there and she's wearing her clothes that she's going into the Christmas party, and the fibers are just dropping and stuff like that. And when the person goes down the stairs, this person who comes in with this beaver fur and this dark animal skin and this black wool jacket or shirt or something like that, maybe Patsy drops, whatever the intruder is wearing mingles with what Patsy has already dropped when she goes down there. Maybe that's what happened. Or, as I've said before, maybe, these people knew John and Patsy well enough to know what they were going to wear to the Christmas party. So they just wore something similar so that it could make it look like Patsy and John were just moving all over the crime scene, and so on and so forth. So, anyways, um, this suggested that the sweater jacket or a similar garment was present near the crime scene. Some investigators argued that the fibers could have transferred innocently when John Ramsey dropped the duct tape onto the blanket that had been in contact with Patsy's clothing. But Ross observed that the paint tray and ligature were far from the blanket, and that Patsy said she never wore that sweater jacket while painting. Correct. And that's why I say it had to, if that, well, that's a good point, because I'm talking about how those red fibers ended up under the the tape, but I'm forgetting the fact that those fibers were found in the paint tray and in the ligature. They said they never saw the rope. They said we don't have any rope like that. It's not even found in this house. And that's why I say either the outside intruder had something to do with this, or and the outside intruder wore something similar. Huh. I don't know how we're gonna make that work. Or it, it suggests that, Patsy was around certain materials at least. Um, and it makes it kind of weird, because if your garment is around, it's just suspicious, really. Because if your garment is around the rope that you said that you know nothing about, and then it pops up in your paint tray, which you said you never painted in this jacket, in this sweater, but your fibers from this sweater show up in the paint tray, they show up under the tape. and they show up embedded in the ligature with her hair, that the embedded in the ligature with her hair, because some of the rope fibers, it becomes sort of um it gets a little bit harder to disentangle because there were fibers from the that exact cord found in JonBenét's room on her bed. So we have to try to trace down where exactly the garrote was made. Was it made upstairs? Because if it was made upstairs, then that means that either on the way in or at some point in time, they were looking around trying to find something, and they spent a significant amount of time in JonBenét's room for whatever reason and decided to set up shop to start building these materials that they would need, because it seems like they're pretty dead set on kidnapping JonBenet. And that's what I'm saying. It seems like they're pretty, this cannot be anything toward John, because they never even looked at anybody else. They looked at JonBenet and JonBenet only, because you've gone as far as to come in. Seems like you already know where you're going. You've come in, you made yourself, we don't know how they know that JonBenet likes pineapple. We don't know that. Because apparently, as soon as she got up, they stunned her and put her back to sleep, and then woke her back up again when she got downstairs and asked her what her favorite snack was. And apparently she said pineapple and milk or something like that. But apparently they go upstairs and they're setting up shop up there, you know, creating this garrote. And then for some reason they're like, oh, we missed something. We know that we can use something to sort of toggle this thing. We're going to go try to find something strong. What about pins and felt tip markers? Nope, those are going to break. We need something that's sturdy. Okay, let's go look down in the basement, and they go find Patsy's paintbrush, and they break it and bring it back up. And so they're kind of searching through the basement, and then they bring it back up, and they continue to work on the garrote up in JonBenét's room. Sort of like JonBenét's room was sort of this central operation of sorts, I guess. And I'll just kind of leave that there. But it's just, you wonder, okay, if that's the case, what was the motivation and the goal of the criminal? And now that we've started to identify that JonBenet was really a prime target, not John. JonBenet was really a prime target, because no matter what we do, no matter how we think about it, all of this centers around JonBenet. There is really nothing other than the ransom note. Think about it. Other than the ransom note, there is nothing that centers around John. Not a thing. Everything that we look at is handcrafted and made specifically for JonBenet. Everything that is done for John. The pineapple bowl, the pineapples, and the milk, that's JonBenet. Right? Going and getting the stun gun to use on JonBenet. Setting up shop in making the stuff in JonBenét's room, because it's weird, right? Because you have a free room to set up shop in John Andrews' room, in which maybe you've gone in there. They were talking about the backpack being in there. Maybe you've gone in there or something of that nature, and you started looking around in there, and you said, I'm going to set a couple of things down, but then you decided not to stay in there. And then instead of going in Burke's room and staying in Burke's room, you decided to go all the way across the hallway and go into JonBenét's room. Because then we start to try to understand the track, because where did you come in the house then? Did you walk right through the front door? Did you come through the back door and then go up the steps and then find JonBenét's room first? and then go up to John's room and check out the checks, find his checks and stuff like that, and then come back down and then go into John Andrews' room and then go out of John Andrews' room into Burke's room? Like, how did you make your way? And then you make your way down to the kitchen to look around and find things, and then you make your way down to the basement? How did you map and track through the house? What was important to you as an intruder to where you were mapping and tracking through the house, and for what purpose? And then ultimately, did you go in Melinda's room, right? Because Melinda's room is right there. And then ultimately, something told you, out of all of the rooms and places that I've been in, upstairs and downstairs, I want to set up shop in JonBenét's room. What told you that? And that's what's confusing, because it's chaos. It actually is not a straight line. And obviously, it'd still be the intruder who doesn't have a straight line, because the sort of explanation there is that the intruder doesn't know the house enough to have a straight line perspective to hey, I know what's in the basement, I know what I need here, I know what I need here, and so there would be a little bit of chaos in going back and forth. But there would also be chaos if somebody was in there doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing, and was sort of maybe making stuff up as they go. There's also that. But I know it's hard to disentangle on that, but let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. And I'm gonna take a break, and I'm gonna come back. But until next time, take it easy.